Hi guys, and welcome on Linux Art. Today I want to talk about KDE distributions. Which distribution should you use if you want to use a very mature and stable KDE desktop with all new features? Let's have a look which options we do have and what I recommend. Just to start, my favorite Linux distribution is Linux Mint. Linux Mint has a great ecosystem. They are developing a whole desktop called Cinnamon and many more applications which all make together this brilliant Linux distribution, which is, in my opinion, one of the best we have ever seen. But yeah, Linux Mint has three different flavors or editions. There is the Cinnamon edition. This is the very popular one, which is very similar, for example, to Windows 7 or Windows 10, I would say. And we have also the XFCE edition, which is kind of more similar to Windows XP, for example, and also Mate, which is also just like XFCE, but another technology under it. And I would say I can't really recommend Mate edition because, yeah, it's very traditional. If you want to use a lightweight desktop, then have a look to XFCE. This is great. And if you want to use all features, then use Cinnamon. But we can't find any KDE in here because Linux Mint has ditched their KDE desktop. If we have a look to the KDE blog, then we see here a KDE Linux Mint 18.3 version, which was released in December 2017. So it's almost 7 to 8 years ago when the last Linux Mint KDE version came out. Why isn't there any KDE version? Because the Linux Mint team is focusing on the GNOME desktop family, because all the other editions are using the same environment, the same app family. They are all using the GTK toolkit. If we have a look to KDE, for example, KDE has a whole own family instead of GNOME. We have very different apps which are kind of doing the same, but they are a bit more mature in many points. For example, there are also very popular apps out there which come from the KDE project, which is, for example, Krita. So let's have a look in here. Here we have it. We have also KDE Live, which is very popular and known all across Linux, not even Linux distributions. It is also known all over all operating systems, I would say, because you can also use KDE Live on Windows and on Mac OS. And I guess most users which are using KDE Live are using the Windows version. Quite funny. Also, of course, GNOME has its GNOME apps. We also have a GNOME Circle homepage, which represents some apps using the GNOME technology behind it. And they are also sometimes very popular. They all have a big app repository and an app family. So which one is better? Of course, I can't really make this out in a video, but I would say KDE applications are a bit more complicated, but also have a bit more functionality than the GNOME apps, because GNOME is designed to be very, very simple in many cases, which can be very positive, but it also can be negative because of, for example, lacking functionality, which KDE applications are more capable of. Can you use also KDE applications on GNOME, and can you also use GNOME applications on KDE? Of course you can, but they are all more designed to work in their own environment than in the other one. So, for example, if you use the KDE desktop, you don't want to use any GNOME file manager, for example, and vice versa. So there are differences, and I would say one very important point in choosing the right family is which apps do you like more? Which concepts do you like more? Of course, KDE has also some disadvantages. I would say KDE is a bit more buggy than GNOME, because GNOME buys itself almost bug-free applications because they don't have too much functionality, and KDE has a lot more functionality, and sometimes it's a bit more buggy. Also, I tested it out today, for example, with the K organizer, which crashed sometimes for me. And we can also see some other example, which I'm showing you today, which doesn't leave the KDE desktop in a very good light. I personally would stick to the GNOME desktop, but there are many users who like using the KDE desktop. But you have a desktop, you also have to use some base system. For example, like Debian. Debian is the mother of many Linux distributions out there, which are, for example, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Pop! OS, and so on. And Debian also comes, beside many other desktops, with the KDE platform and the KDE desktop. I would say Debian is a great choice if you want a very stable operating system and you still want everything vanilla, because Debian doesn't change any default settings and you just get the KDE desktop how it is presented by the developers, which is quite cool, I would say. But also Debian is a bit more manual in some points, and especially in the beginning can be very overwhelming if you didn't use any Debian before. So I would just recommend Debian KDE for Linux users who want to build their Linux kind of themselves and are not afraid of the terminal. Beside that, Debian is a great pick, I would say. The next one in our list is Kubuntu. Ubuntu is the KDE edition of Ubuntu. We have a very great Ubuntu base. It's just like the normal Ubuntu, but without a GNOME desktop as we see it in the normal Ubuntu edition, just with a KDE desktop. Kubuntu has a very stable base and is also very mature because it's out there since the beginning of the Ubuntu era, I would say, and is used by many people out there. So if you are a Ubuntu user and you want to use the KDE desktop, just go with the Kubuntu desktop and you can't make anything wrong. But Ubuntu has the Snap base under it, and many actions Canonical does for Ubuntu are also directly imported to Kubuntu, not unlike, for example, Pop! OS or Linux Mint. They are filtering some stuff out. Kubuntu, in the other side, is a official spin of Ubuntu, so they can't really distance themselves, for example, before Snap or other changes. They have to adapt all these changes, which should save the compatibility to the Ubuntu main system, which is a quite understandable point, I would say. So I would only use Kubuntu if you are into the Ubuntu universe and you want to stay in the Ubuntu universe. If you don't like the Ubuntu universe, then maybe Manjaro is a great option. Manjaro is based on Arch Linux, which is very popular for its bleeding edge feature, I would say. Manjaro is a bit more settled in this way, so you get also new software very, very quick, but with robust rolling releases, they call it. They have the Arch base. This then comes to the unstable branch. Then they are testing it in unstable and testing it also in the testing branch. And if then everything is okay, then it comes into Manjaro stable, which is a great update procedure I can really recommend. But even Manjaro claims to be stable. Sometimes in my own tests, I had some bad luck with Manjaro updates. So I would say just use it if you want to be in the Arch universe or want to get into the Arch universe. Then Manjaro is a great distribution. And if you don't want it as bleeding edge as, for example, in Endeavour OS or Arch Linux, a bit more settled, I would say, but with the same spirit like, for example, Arch Linux. Great distribution in my opinion, but I wouldn't recommend this for the new Linux user. What's also a very interesting option is Fedora. Fedora is well known for their GNOME desktop, but they also have many spins, and also the KDE Plasma desktop is quite popular of Fedora. Fedora has also very new software and drivers just right inside it, but they release a new version every 6 months. so you have to upgrade your Fedora quite often. This is the only downside of Fedora, and you are also using the RPM package base, so there aren't working many instructions in the internet which are, for example, written for Ubuntu based systems. But beside that, Fedora is also a great option. Use it if you want to give it a try. It could be a great start if you are in the Red Hat universe or want to develop some new things for the Red Hat universe, for example. If you want to develop KDE apps yourself, then maybe KDE Neon is a thing, because KDE Neon is the distribution which comes right from the KDE developers, which brings the latest KDE desktop with all the new features, which is based on Ubuntu LTS, at our times Ubuntu 24.4. It's a very stable system, but also with very new KDE features. So this almost looks like a perfect match. There's also another distribution which is very well known for its KDE desktop, and this is called OpenSUSE. OpenSUSE is a German-based operating system, of course also based on Linux, which also uses the RPM packages and is here for kind of enterprise users, I would say. They have a rolling release edition, which is really great, and also the Leap edition, which is more stable and way more old-fashioned, I would say. And yeah, old-fashioned is a good word for OpenSUSE, because in my eyes, OpenSUSE didn't really evolve in the last 10 to 15 years. For example, if you have a look to Yast, this is the administration tool of OpenSUSE. Yeah, there hasn't really changed anything in the last 15 years. And you see some procedures of OpenSUSE, for example, adding a new printer, which isn't quite state of the art. But beside that, also a great distribution, especially the Tumbleweed edition, I would say. Just let's head back to the KDE Neon distribution. This just looks like the perfect match, and I would say, yeah, it is quite the perfect match, because we have Ubuntu as a stable base for our operating system, so almost all instructions on the internet work just fine with KDE Neon. Also, we have a vanilla KDE desktop, which is delivered straight from the KDE developers, which makes it, for a KDE distribution, I would say the best choice if you are into KDE and if you want a distribution which just works, which don't has any extra features, and it's just pure KDE. But just to review KDE, or just to give some insights I have about KDE, the first point I would say, with some technologies, and they have great ideas. For example, if we look to the network, we have a very good network applet, I would call it. We could expand this. We can see our speed, our download curve, but also we can see some details right from our desktop panel here. We see our IP address and all the important things we need to know. This is great. We also have a very modern looking panel here, which is floating above the screen, I would say. And if we open up any application in full screen mode, this turns into a regular taskbar here, which is also looking really nice, and it's working very well with many workflows. So these are very cool features. Also, if we have a look to the system settings, they are looking quite more configurable than, for example, for GNOME desktops. But yeah, this is it. We also have, for example, some settings for firewall, which is also quite cool. We see here our firewall type UFV, for example, and you have it right integrated into the system settings. This is such a great benefit we have in comparison to the GNOME desktop, because there we have our own graphical user interface for firewall, and this is very old. It's called GUFW, and this is also okay, but yeah, it's quite more nice if we have it really in the system settings. Yeah, you can also choose some other firewall types if you have it available here. This is very cool and are fresh ideas which some other desktops are missing. But also, let's come to a point which I don't like about KDE, or which isn't really finished in KDE, and that's very sad because I'm using it a lot, and this is called online accounts. Yeah, we can add some online accounts. I personally use Nextcloud for synchronization for my files, also contacts or calendars. That's such a great tool. So I can just select Nextcloud, can type in my server address. So I'm doing this here with a demo instance here, and let's open this up. Then our Nextcloud opens up itself. This is great. I can log into it. So I'm logging in. I can grant access, and then yeah, I'm connected with my KDE desktop. They don't support the calendars yet, which is very sad, but this isn't the only point. Just let's have a look to the storage of my file manager if it's working with Nextcloud. And I open this one up, I go to network. Here we see all our network things, like for example Google Drive, Samba, Apple devices for example also, but of course our Nextcloud storage. We see here the folder is empty, so this doesn't look right. And this isn't only with this Nextcloud. Honestly, I don't know if this even works with any Nextcloud, and this is very sad that this doesn't really work. And yeah, this is just bad written, I would say. For example, if we have a look to the GNOME alternative, I open up online accounts on my Linux Mint computer here. I have here max@cloud.libo.de. It's the same address, the same account, and I'm opening this one up. And just let's have a look. It takes some time, and here we have our files. And yeah, I can open something up and work with it. But KDE doesn't like this at all. And also they don't support any calendar integration. This is just one point where KDE doesn't really shine in my case. Also, I found a funny drop-down menu inception if we have a look to Dolphin. Dolphin is a great file manager. We have a split view there, which is really important for me. I'm using this all the time. It's very cool that we also have two different path settings here. So here above and also here in the upper bar. And yeah, this just works quite good. I'm also could pop out some views. There are many cool features, but where are all my other dropdowns? These dropdowns are in this burger menu here and here under more. Okay, you can show this menu bar with all actions up here. I would like if this is the default, but here it's okay. But if we don't have it here, just let me have a look here. Settings, show menu bar. Why isn't that in view? Let's head over to the burger menu here. And this is the default. Then, for example, select to more. Then select, for example, view. Then location bar, and we see here, yeah, this is the drop down inception we have in KDE. So in the end, KDE is a great desktop. It looks very good, but in my opinion, and also for my use cases, KDE is losing the breath at some points and just isn't the right desktop for me personally. But if you are KDE user and you are happy with KDE, please use it. KDE is a great desktop platform. It has very cool inventions, but yeah, it's just different to GNOME, and this is completely okay. And it's good that it's different because otherwise, yeah, we don't need two desktop families. Just have a look to Discover, which is very cool in KDE Neon. We have Flatpak and Snap available right off the start. So if I, for example, selecting a Krita, I can also choose from where I want to install it. For example, from FlatHub or Snap. The KDE dev team says, yeah, don't use the Ubuntu versions, just use FlatHub or Snap. For example, with Ubuntu we have 5.2.6 and with Snap, okay, we have 5.2.9. But honestly, and to be fair, yeah, FlatHub also only has the 5.2.6, just a small example. But yeah, this is the app launcher, and I would say, yeah, it's kind of different, and I'm not really familiar and I'm not used to this user experience we see here. So I would say KDE is on the paper a great desktop platform, but others are more easy. and in my opinion are also a bit more comfortable to getting used to it. But in the end, I would say, yeah, this isn't really objective from me. So yeah, just give it a try. If you want to try KDE, I would say KDE Neon is a good starting point, but also all other distributions I mentioned today can be a good starting point from you. There isn't any red flag in any of these distributions. This was it for today. If you found this video helpful, if you learned something new, please leave a like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, because we are releasing new stuff every week about Linux and open source. And just write me into the comments, which desktop are you currently using? Are you using Cinnamon? Are you using GNOME? Are you using KDE? Or are you still using Windows 11, for example? Just write it me into the comments which desktop you are using, and if you want to give KDE a try, or if you gave already KDE a try in the past, and just write it about it. I'm very curious about this. In the end, thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye.